Good morning, students. I want to cover the writing prompt with you. This is found under the Writing tab. This is where you will submit your essay by Sunday. This is Quarter 3, Week 1, Essay 1. And if you open the tab, I've also posted for you again the Purdue OWL site in case you need to refer there to make sure you have your in-text citations as well as your works cited page formatted correctly. You must also make certain that you have your MLA heading and your page header. I will make a separate video of how to set up your MLA heading and your page header after I finish this video. But this video is precisely going to focus on the rubric. Now, it is imperative that you pay attention to everything that I'm saying and you pay attention to this rubric. If you do not meet all of the requirements, your grade will be very low. Also, hear this, if you do not include MLA in-text citations and an MLA works cited page, you will fail. I will give you a 0 on this essay. That is a mandatory requirement to make sure that you do not commit plagiarism. So if you leave out the in-text citations and the works cited page, it will be a 0. You may refer to the MLA format on Purdue OWL. And also, as I said, I will make a separate video that will explain how to set up your in-text citations, how to set up your works cited page, and how to format your MLA heading and your page header correctly. Okay, let's take a look at the rubric. When you submit your paper, I want you to copy and paste this rubric on the back of your paper if you want a grade. If you do not submit this by copying and pasting it to the end of your paper, you will not get a grade on this essay. What I expect you to do is merely copy this document after you finish writing your paper. I expect you to scroll down after you have completed your works cited page. I expect your rubric to be the page after your works cited page. Okay, let's go over the rubric. This is what I call my basic rubric for writing an essay. I will add to this rubric when we begin working on essay 2. But for now, this is just to enable you to learn the basics of writing according to the proper format for upper level writing. First of all, let's begin with the introduction. Your introduction is worth 30 points. First of all, make sure that you have a great attention grabber so that you can get the attention of the reader or the audience. Each piece here is worth 5 points, which makes a total of 30 points. So if you have a weak opening, that is an automatic 0 on the attention grabber. That is your first sentence, or as I said in the previous video, some students are choosing to use a quote from the text that really makes the character of Scrooge pop in a dynamic way. You can also formulate that into a sentence or two that will kind of give a quick illustration of the character of Scrooge, so that right off the bat we know with whom we are dealing. Make sure that your paper is effectively written. Make sure that your sentences do not contain awkward phrasing. Make sure that your punctuation is all correct. Make sure that you do not have run-on sentences. That element in the introduction is worth 5 points. Make sure that your paper, your introduction is very creative. Do not just be writing bland sentences. Make sure that you use colorful, figurative language, vivid elements to describe what you are saying in your introduction. You must also include a metaphor. I did briefly mention this in a previous video, but your introduction must begin with a metaphor. Your metaphor could be a description of Scrooge. Now remember, a metaphor is comparing someone to something without saying that he is like this. You just simply say, Scrooge is an iceberg. So that would be an example of a metaphor that you could use. This would be a great opening. You could open your paper with your metaphor. That's perfectly fine. Your metaphor needs to either be in the opening statement or statements, or it needs to be splashed somewhere in the background information, which is the second part of your introduction. You do not want to incorporate your metaphor into your thesis. That is not the place, and you definitely do not want to create your metaphor in the last piece of your introduction as the rhetorical question. It needs to be either in the opening, or it needs to be in the second part, which is the background information. Okay, the next part that I'm going to look at as I'm scoring your essay is the thesis. Now, the thesis is basically worth 10 points because I'm looking at two aspects of your thesis. Does your thesis contain the subject that you are going to be discussing, and does it convey an opinion? It needs to be very boldly stated, coming out saying that Scrooge incurred many experiences leading to an epiphany that created his character into a juxtaposition. That is a good subject or a good thesis because it sticks to the subject and it is an opinion stated without using words such as I believe or I think or in my opinion. Don't ever do that. Don't ever incorporate personal pronouns in your thesis or anywhere in your paper as far as that goes. The next piece that I'm going to look at is your thesis concise? Is it direct and to the point? It should not be over wordy. And is it logical? Does it make sense to the subject at hand that according to the prompt that you're supposed to be writing about? And is it persuasive? Does it definitely make a strong stance? And by using the example that I came up with or something similar to that, Scrooge definitely incurred, or I wouldn't even say definitely, I would just simply say Scrooge incurred many experiences that led to an epiphany, which created his character in the end to be a complete juxtaposition from the character he was at the beginning of the novel. Okay, so I said it a little differently that time, showing you that you can still be concise and logical, and you can still contain the subject and get directly to the point you're trying to make. So there's not just one way that you can word your thesis statement, but I do expect you to articulate the thesis based on your language and your style, but make sure that you are direct and to the point. Okay, the next piece that we're going to look at is the body of your paper. The body is worth 40 points. And in the body of your paper, I'm going to be looking at each paragraph, picking it apart to see if I see all of these elements contained within each paragraph in the body of your paper. Again, these are worth 5 points each, and I'm going to be looking to see if you have a logical order as you are discussing and explaining the events that Scrooge went through to get to the end result of being a changed person. As long as you are following the sequence order as to how he incurred each of these experiences that led him to the epiphany of, oh my goodness, I had better make a change, then you're okay. I'm also going to be looking at the body paragraphs to see if your thesis is echoed in every single one of your topic sentences. Now, notice I've used the abbreviation TS in that particular line, and down here at the bottom of the page I have a key that tells you TS represents topic sentence. Okay, so I'm going to be looking at the topic sentence, which is the very first sentence in every one of your paragraphs, your body paragraphs. Topic sentence, that is the overall claim, the statement you are making. Your first body paragraph might be that in the beginning of the novel, Scrooge was a very nasty, grumpy, stingy, or greedy character. So you make that statement, and that whole body paragraph is going to provide textual evidence that proves he was stingy and greedy, he was grumpy, and then you're going to be explaining that, that was his nature in the very beginning. And as you move through each one of your body paragraphs, you're going to have a different topic sentence, a statement, a claim about the character of Scrooge. And you'll see through this, his first encounter, his second encounter, and so on and so forth, he does begin to transform throughout the novel. I'm going to be looking at each one of your body paragraphs to make sure that you have fully and adequately defended your thesis statement. So every one of your topic sentences must refer back to your thesis statement, and when you defend it, that represents the textual evidence that you are providing. Now keep in mind, I have allowed you to only have to use one piece of textual evidence per body paragraph. Yes, you may use up to 3 pieces of textual evidence if that's what your paper needs, but you are required to have at least one textual evidence per body paragraph in order to prove your points that you're making according to your topic sentence. You must make sure that it is strong and adequate in the defense of that sentence you are stating. The source material, you must make sure that you are documenting your sources within the text according to the MLA format. As I said earlier, I will make another lecture video explaining how to do the MLA citations, how to document your sources correctly. But make sure that you are doing that, because I will be counting points off. Logical support. Make sure that the support that you choose directly attends to the proving point of that statement you made, and also make sure that it's logical and it makes sense in your paragraph. Now, the next thing, it's not enough to just have textual evidence. You have to have solid and ample commentary. Now, if you drop down here to the key, you'll notice that CM represents commentary, and commentary just simply means the discussion and explanation of your textual evidence. So you must thoroughly discuss it and explain it, and one sentence of explanation per piece of textual evidence is not enough. It must be, you must include at least 2 sentences of explanation, and sometimes you might need 3 sentences to fully explain how that textual evidence definitely proves the statement you made in the topic sentence. The next piece is it must possess a balance of commentary and evidence. You've got to have a balance. If you develop one of your body paragraphs and all you have is textual evidence, you will not get credit for that paragraph. If you only have explanation and no textual evidence, then you don't get credit for that. So you've got to have a balance. You have to have both. Finally, that extended metaphor must continue throughout your body paragraphs. You opened that metaphor in your introduction stating that Scrooge is an iceberg. Throughout the extended body paragraphs, you must continue to extend that metaphor and state that with this experience, this iceberg began to melt ever so slightly. And each experience, it melts, this iceberg melts a little more and then a little more, okay? So we want to continue melting that iceberg. We don't want it to completely melt until we get to the conclusion, but it does begin to melt. The iceberg is growing smaller and smaller with each experience. The final piece that I want to talk about right now is the conclusion. This is the part where you need to adequately sum up your argument, follow the instructions that I gave you in the lesson plan slides on how to write your conclusion. The part of the rubric that says include a call to action, ignore that for this essay. I'm giving everybody 5 points if you did your citations correctly and you've done your works cited page correctly. But I'm giving everybody 5 points for that automatically because I'm not covering that element in this particular essay. We'll catch it in the next essay. So ignore the call to action. But then you have to provide a closure. Now the closure of your metaphor is going to be the very last sentence in your conclusion. And this is where finally, in the end of the novel, the iceberg has completely melted and is now nothing more than a puddle of water. Okay, so make sure that you completely close that metaphor that you opened in the introduction. Make sure that your essay has been completely brought to a smooth and effective closure in your conclusion. Follow those guidelines in the lesson plans. In the conclusion, never include quotes. Never include quotes, but you do wrap up your quotes with commentary only, in that you just kind of use a sentence or two to summarize based on all of the evidence provided in this essay. There is definite verification that Scrooge underwent several changes that finally transformed him into a brand new person by the end of the novel. That's perfectly fine. That's a good way to sum up all of the evidence and all of the points that you made in your essay. This first essay 1 is worth 100 points. So make sure that you follow this rubric and make sure that you follow all of the guidelines for how to write your essay in the lesson plans. And of course, let me know if you have any questions. I will be continuing today and this afternoon late until 6 o'clock. I will be continuing those Google Meets to answer any and all of your questions as you finalize the steps in your essay.